So this week's game versus the Minnesota Vikings is an interesting one for Cleveland. One, the Vikings, they're much better than what their record would suggest. They're 1-2. They just got to win at home versus the Seahawks, but they have been in both games that they have lost. They lost an overtime game on the road to the Bengals, and then they also lost a thriller to the Cardinals where Greg Joseph just missed a field goal. So both of their losses have come by very close field goal losses by teams that aren't necessarily bad, right? Arizona's undefeated right now. The Bengals are 3-1 right now. And even the Seahawks aren't a team that anybody's going to categorize as bad. So it's not like they haven't played tough competition. They have played plenty of tough competition. But for the Browns, outside of the Chiefs, this is probably going to be one of the tougher games and one of the games that's going to test this Browns defense more so than other games have in the past. What do I mean by that? What's the Browns game plan going to be offensively and defensively? We'll get into that, but before I do, I want to make sure you guys are subscribed and notified so you can be here to watch my watch party and post-game show live during this game. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you're subscribed. I do it for every game. Also, want to give a shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. I'm going to start with Michael Mateague, Michael Morales, Mark Kahn, Max Haymaker, Drake, Nick Merrick, Mike Labra, Wes and Megan, D.A. and J. Greg Ehlers, Austin Bolin, Easley Bash, Joe Hart, Gabriel Wilson, Fred Pratt III, David Valtiara, Relentless Buck, Chunt, Rex Kaufman, Kevin Johnston, Cleveland Cart, Matt H., Sign Sheets, Gemini, Lewin Freeman, Fight Dirty 74, Yo-Yo, Matt Lloyd, Paul Wilcox, Hundo Magnifico, Kyle Stouffer, Lukey from Munich, Deveroff, J Guy 101, Musty Taco, Joe Bobby, Brad Cowboy, Dylan W., James McGinley, Arendal, Chad Gimme, David Maldonado, Dylan Hill, Josh Bendor, Jaleel Salim Jr., Mark M., Stuart Moore, Cleveland BCI, Robert Jermaine Jr., Dave Mike May, Andrew Hirsch, Curtis Bear, Batman, Barack Kumar, John Albert, Beerman069, Masayua, Buzzer Roland, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Philip Wilcox, Marie River, Sean Barron, Gago Spizzano, Corporal Nick Lopez, Dom Gazzola, Nick Nasty, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Christian, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Billy Moose Gentry, Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, Dog Pound Kai, Lydia, Jesus Serrano, Alexander Davis, Chris Phones, Picktown Browns backer, Max Nilikenko, Mark Khan, Max Aldojo, and Water Bear Marketing. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining the Patreon, joining the live streams. I hope to see you guys there on Sunday. But now let's go and talk about this game. So this game comes down to a lot of interesting matchups. There's interesting matchups on the offensive side of the ball. There's going to be some interesting matchups on the defensive side of the ball for the Cleveland Browns. I think the overall theme here is going to be similarity, right? They run a very similar offense to what the Cleveland Browns run. Like, it's going to look very familiar when not the Kansas City Chiefs, when the Minnesota Vikings are out there running their offense, because you're going to see a lot of the same exact stuff that the Cleveland Browns go with, right? So similarity and familiarity, that's going to be a returning kind of theme throughout this preview. Another thing that's going to be in this preview is where the Browns kind of edge out the Vikings despite that similarity. And my overall thesis for this game is the reason I do think the Browns should have the edge is because since they are so similar, I do believe the Browns, in the ways that each team is similar, is just better in all those ways, right? If you look at the offense, wide receivers, you could say right now that the Vikings have the edge, but I would say the Browns have the edge at quarterback. That's just how I feel. I feel like Baker Mayfield's a more dynamic playmaker. If you need a play in the fourth quarter, if you need a great throw to get your team into the game, I think Baker delivers that more often than Kirk Cousins does, who is a good quarterback. But the one thing that separated Kirk Cousins from being the great quarterback throughout the years, or the guy that you would trust in those situations, is his inability to make those kind of throws, those kind of plays at the end of games that really make the difference. Not saying that he's never done it, but doing it consistently, I feel like Baker's more consistent in that area. But then you look at running back, I would take Chubb and Hunt over, Dalvin Cook. No disrespect to Dalvin Cook. I think he's a really good running back, but I believe the Browns duo is just too much for a lot of teams there. And then the offensive line, the Browns have a better offensive line. They have similar tight ends there, right? And then defensively, if you look at who's their best player and who's the best player on the defense, the Browns have the edge there. So the similarities are there, and that's going to be a thing. But personnel-wise and roster-wise, the Browns are just the better team, I believe, going into this. Again, not saying the Vikings aren't a good team, but the Browns, I do believe, are a better team. Now let's talk about how the Browns are going to want to go into this defensively. This is going to be an interesting week for Joe Woods defensively, right? Because last week was such a cathartic moment for a lot of Browns fans to see this defense play like they all believe that this defense can play. And this week is going to be more of a nervous moment for these Browns fans, right? Because if you look at every single thing the Browns had issues with going into that game versus the Bears, Kirk Cousins is somebody who can take advantage of that, right? Browns were a little bit too predictable. Browns were very bad on third down. Browns were having issues stopping certain run plays. That's something that the Minnesota Vikings are built to kind of take advantage of, right? If the Browns are going to play soft coverage on the Vikings, they're going to get first downs all day, every day, whenever they want it, because they have the wide receivers to do it. They have the quarterback who's smart enough to do it. So that's going to be a issue, right? And also the Browns are down a starting corner. Greg Newsom's not going to play this week. It's going to be Greedy Williams instead of Greg Newsom. We'll see how Greedy holds up. We haven't seen him much this year, but what we have seen of him has been up and down. And then you got Denzel Ward in there, of course. So we'll see how those guys perform in the trust that Joe Woods has, right? And this is the interesting part. Although the Vikings have the tools to push it down the field, Kirk Cousins is not necessarily the kind of quarterback who's going to push it down the field a ton during a game, right? Unless that's specifically what the game is called for. Kirk Cousins doesn't really go for that most of the time. So what's the game plan going to be defensively, right? Are they going to do the same thing they did against the Chiefs, where they're afraid to get beat and they play soft coverage up front? Or are they going to be a little bit more aggressive, sit on some of these short routes, and allow themselves to, be more at a risk of being beat deep and just trust that their offense can put points back if need be? I wonder what the approach there is going to be. I think how they come out this week is going to say a lot about how they're going to come out for the rest of the season when it comes to the strategy and the aggressiveness for this defense. So that's going to be very interesting to see. One of the things I don't want to see this week is a ton of blitzing. And I know blitzing is just a fun thing to say whenever people are talking about the Browns. You want them to blitz. Everybody kind of always agrees if you say you want to blitz more. But one, the Browns don't blitz that much to begin with. Even when they had 9 sacks last week, they didn't blitz a ton. They were just getting home with their front four. And I would expect them not to blitz a ton this week just because Kirk Cousins is really, really good against the blitz. I mean, he has, in each of his 3 games that he has played so far this year, like a 90 PFF grade against the blitz. He's not a joke against the blitz. If you blitz him, he will beat you. He will find an open man because he does get rid of the ball so quickly. So that's what you don't want to do against the Vikings. And also, you don't want to blitz versus the Vikings for the same reasons that a ton of teams don't blitz against the Browns, right? Because if you get really aggressive and start blitzing, you can get bit on a play action real bad for a big gain or multiple gains or gash like that on the run game. So the Browns aren't going to blitz a ton. That makes a ton of sense there. And you also have to worry about that running game. The Vikings, I know their offensive line isn't great, but they're going to be able to run the ball well. They ran the ball well last week without Dalvin Cook. All signs point to Dalvin Cook playing this week. They'll be able to run the ball well. They also have really good tight end play. They'll keep those tight ends in protection, especially this week against Myles Garrett. Overall, for the defense, the goal is going to be up to the front four. If this front four can get pressure early in downs, right, to get the Vikings behind the sticks early, that allows the defense to go to their nickel packages more. So that means more JOK on the field, more Grant Delpit on the field, more athletic people on the field. And when they're in that package, right, where they're a little smaller but a lot more athletic. I feel very good about their ability to cover the weapons that the Vikings have, man-to-man or in some zone or whatever they want to do. I feel comfortable about the personnel that's going to be on the field enough to where I feel like they're not going to have an issue there. But if they can't get into those packages and they have to stay in base 4-3 most of this game, that presents a ton of problems, right? Because then you're talking about Justin Jefferson getting off, you're talking about Adam Thielen getting off, and you're talking about one of their tight ends getting off, because then that leaves Taki on the field, then that leaves, the slower-footed linebackers. You're seeing more of Mack Wilson. So the more they can be in the nickel package, the more you can see JOK, the more they can get this team behind the sticks defensively, the better this defense is going to look in the long run. So that's going to be the game plan. Get them behind the sticks and get into your nickel packages so you can have more athletic DBs out on the field to cover all of these weapons that the Vikings have. Now let's talk about what the game plan might be for the Browns offense. All right, so I know the Browns are a run-first team. They'll always be run-first. Kevin Stefanski is a run-first kind of guy. They're 4 deep at running back. They're going to run the ball, all right? But I do think that a point of emphasis this week, or at least a real good point of attack here versus the Vikings, is going to be this secondary, because it's banged up. They got a lot of guys in that secondary on the injured reserve, well, now on the injured reserve list, well, on the injury report. And also, if they're going to be healthy with the guys that they have, right? No Mackenzie Alexander. He's not with the team right now. They're going to have Rashad Breeland and Patrick Peterson out there with Nick Vigil in coverage. Those are the 3 guys I want to attack most this game. You can attack the middle of the field real successfully against Breeland and Vigil. You can go deep on Breeland a lot. And what I would expect is you're going to see Odell moving around a ton pre-snap, because they're going to try to make sure that they can get Odell on Breeland matched up with him, because I feel like they feel really good about the kind of routes that they can get open against Rashad Breeland, because he's just not been that great to start the year. And I think Odell is somebody who can really take advantage of him. He can beat him deep. He can beat him in the middle of the field. I think this week is going to be a big game here for Odell, and I think it's going to be a big game for Rashard Higgins. Just those 2 wide receivers seem like people who have really good games here. I don't know if you're going to see a ton from Donovan Peoples-Jones, just because I think he's going to be the person that ends up with Patrick Peterson a lot, and I don't think they're going to test him as much as they would test Breeland or as much as they would test Nick Vigil. So they're going to go to the guys in the slot. Maybe Demetric Felton has a big game here, or Kareem Hunt. They're going to attack that slot area, and they're really going to attack Rashad Breeland a lot. That's really what I think they're going to do here. Be careful when targeting these tight ends a lot, because Eric Hendricks is a really good linebacker. You want to be aware of him. I think, yes, the run game is going to be there, and when you need it, I think you're going to be able to run the ball. I don't think it's going to be like last week where you just couldn't run the ball consistently enough. But if they're going to load the box and really worry about the run, which I anticipate that they're going to do, I think you have a real opportunity to attack that secondary, because it's banged up. And again, they're going to be putting Breeland out there. You can do a lot with how the Vikings play defense. They don't really play a ton of man. So if you move Odell enough, you can get the matchup that you want pre-snap for Odell. And if you can get him on Breeland, I think you can have a really big day for Odell Beckham and for Baker Mayfield. So that's something to watch there, and I think Kevin Stefanski might take advantage of that. And I think there's going to be a big day for Odell and a guy like Rashard Higgins, who kind of excels against these kind of teams who play a lot of zone, because he's such a zone open finder. I don't know what to call him, but that's kind of what he is, right? He's a guy who can find soft spots in zone, sit on them, make a play. But that's really what I expect, both on the offensive side and the defensive side. Look, this is going to be a tough game. This is not going to be an easy game for the Cleveland Browns to win, and it's not a guarantee that they do win this game. The good news is that it's an out-of-conference game, so when it comes to tiebreakers, it's not the biggest deal in the world if they don't win. But it's going to be a tough road win to come by here for the Browns. I do believe ultimately that they should win this game just because they're the better team. But also, I think Seattle was probably the better team last week, and they didn't really come close to beating the Minnesota Vikings. So this is not a cupcake team. This is not an easy victory by any means. But I do think this is a team that the Browns, constructed as they are, should be able to beat. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.